Good morning. In this video, off the review, I'm going to go over questions 7 through 10. This is going to be factoring a trinomial with an a value greater than 1, and then the last two are going to be our special cases. When you're factoring, it's always important that you go ahead and you label your a, b, and c values. Your a value is always in front of the x squared, so my a value here is 2. My b value is always by the x, and my c value is a number without any variables, and this is a negative 15. You always want to include the sign. From there, I'm going to go ahead and draw in my x. This is factoring using the x method. At the top of my x, I want to go ahead and input my b value. At the bottom of my x is going to be my a times c. So 2 times negative 15 is a negative 30. From here, I'm going to find two numbers. When I multiply them, give me a negative 30, but when I add them, give me a positive 7. If this is somewhere where you struggle, you can always use the calculator to help you. And so this, I would go open a new document. We always say no to save. And I'm going to go to option 2, add graphs. Now this is if you're struggling with your multiplications. That way you can still factor, but with the support of the calculator. If you know your multiples, and you just go straight into listing them as we did in my last video. All right, so if I'm gonna use a calculator, I'm gonna take my bottom number, which is my a times c value, negative 30, divided by x, enter. Doesn't matter what the picture looks like. I'm gonna do tab, negative 30, divided by x. So it's the same thing I put before, but this time I'm going to do a plus x. That way it's going to add all of the factors for me, and I just have to stroll and look for that positive 7. Okay, so since I'm looking for a list of numbers, the picture's not going to help me. I need the table. So to get the table on this calculator, I'm going to press Control, which is the yellow button, and then the letter T, which is down at the bottom. My table will pop up, and I'm going to arrow over to that far right column, and I'm looking for a positive 7. So I'm arrowing down, getting close, and there it is. So I'm going to take the two numbers in front, the 10 and the negative 3. Those are my factors. 10 times negative 3 is negative 30, and when I combine 10 and negative 3, it gives me a 7. Okay, so I have my factors. The next step is going to be to go back and divide by my a value. My a value is 2, so I divide by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that means one factor is x plus 5, because my 5 is positive. Now on the other side, I go back, I divide by my a value of 2. This does not divide evenly. If you're not quite sure, you can always use a calculator to help. Since I don't want any decimals and this is not dividing evenly, this is where we say bottoms up. The bottom number goes up in front of the variable. So my 2 is now a 2x, and that minus 3 goes at the end. So the factors of 2x squared plus 7x minus 15 is going to be x plus 5 and 2x minus 3. Okay, going on to number 8, I am now looking at same steps. I want to identify my a, b, and c values. So I have my a value is 3, my b value for this one is a negative 23, and my c value is a 14. Now that I have those values, I'm going to go in and draw my x. This is factoring using our x method. The number at the top is my b value, so that's going to be a negative 23. At the bottom is going to be my A times C. So we want 3 times 14, and that is 42. Okay. Now I want to find two numbers that multiply to 42, but add to a negative 23. Once again, if you struggle, you can always come back and use your calculator. We're going to go under graphs. I'm going to type my bottom number of 42 divided by x, enter, doesn't matter the graph, tab, 42 divided by x, and because I want it to add everything, I'm going to do a plus x, enter. I want the table, so I'm going to do Control T, and now I am looking for a negative 23. And I notice when I scroll down, I'm not getting anywhere, no negative 23. So this, I got a positive 23, not negative. If you don't see it when you scroll down, then you want to scroll up. And usually, that's where those negative values are going to be hiding. So here, I strolled up, I find my negative 23, and it's going with a negative 2 and negative 21. So I have my negative 2 and my negative 21. Almost done. I need to go back and divide by my A value of 3. So here I divide. Negative 2 divided by 3, that does not divide out evenly. So that bottom number of 3 comes out front, in the front of the x. And then I have my minus 2. Then on the other side, I go back, I divide by 3, because that's my A value. Negative 21 divided by 3 is a negative 7. So here I have an x minus 7. Whenever you're factoring, you can always go back and double check by multiplying everything back out, adding your like terms, and you should get the same thing you started off with. All right, the last two numbers I'll show you using the X method, but then I'll also go back and show you the shortcut, because these are perfect squares here, or difference of squares, excuse me. Okay, if you choose to use the X method, which you can, your A value is going to be 1 because that's in front of my x squared. My B value is the number in front of x, but I don't have an x here. So that means it's 0. And the C value is a negative 64. So just like we did before, I have my A, B, and C value. I go, draw in my x. At the top is a 0. At the bottom is a negative 64. I want my factors of 64 that add to a 0. Once again, if you struggle with your multiples, it's okay. Use your calculator. Takes a few seconds. Type in your bottom number, so negative 64 divided by x, enter. Then I do tab, negative 64 divided by x plus x. Okay, just like before, I don't care about the graphs. I want the table, so I go Control T, and I'm looking for 0 in that far right column, and I find it at a positive 8 and a negative 8. So my positive 8 and negative 8, those are the numbers that go on the side. Always go back and divide by the A value of 1. 8 divided by 1 is still 8, so I have an x plus 8. And in my second parenthesis, negative 8 divided by 1 is a negative 8. So in my second parenthesis, I have an x minus 8. Okay. On number 10, this one, I'll go ahead and do the shortcut. I see my middle terms missing, so this is going to be the difference of squares. And so that means I'm going to have, in one parenthesis is a plus, and in the other is a minus. Everything else will be the same. The way we figure what goes inside, I take my first term here, my 9x squared, and I do the square root. Okay, square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of x squared is x. So I have a 3x and a 3x. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my 4. I don't need the sign. I already know my signs. So what's the square root of 4? It's 2. So I put 2. So my answer, my factors of 9x squared and negative 4 is a 3x plus 2 and a 3x minus 2. Good luck.